Happy Friday, guys. This marks the end of a very rough week for the market for Bitcoin. I want to talk about some things that are interesting regarding Bitcoin. We do have some Cipher news, and Bitcoin recently hit a fresh low. Bitcoin drops below 81,000, hits lowest level since 2022. That is not right. This needs to be rewritten. Lowest level since 2022 is $15,000. What it means is it's had the hardest drop since 2022, which should tell you a lot. What was 2022? That was our bottom. That was our bear market lows. 2 years after the halving tends to be the bear market, the crypto winter. We had our 2020 halving, 2021 was peak, and 2022 was the bear market. Throughout 2022, it was pretty much down. The end of 2022 marked the bottom at 15,000. This was one of the roughest times since then. It's down more than 31% from October, actually as much as like 35%, but we'll look at the chart and I'll show you something interesting here in a second. Crypto fear and greed index is now at a 14 and yesterday was at an 11. Now this is the crypto fear and greed index over time going all the way to 2018. You'll see that we did reach 11, and typically this is where things bottom out. Look right here. This was February, one of our low points throughout this cycle. February was another time that Bitcoin was pretty heavily oversold, and in hindsight it was another buying opportunity. And the fear and greed index, if I can get it, no, here it is right there. February 27 reached a fear and greed index of 10. You'll see throughout history it very rarely goes lower than 10. Of course it has, like 2022 in July, which was one of our largest drops in recent memory, or not so recent memory, I guess. But you know, this drop is being compared to this amazing opportunity, the fantastic buying opportunities of 2022. This is what this drop's being compared to. To me, it's starting to sound very delicious. What's not delicious is the Bitcoin miners. They are getting wrecked. They are falling knives. Bitcoin, to be fair, is as well. And they really rely on Bitcoin finding a floor, bottoming out. Of course, going back to October, they were seeing some hype, they were seeing some running, they were seeing some excitement. Of course, Bitcoin was running to all-time highs of 126,000. Bitcoin changes to a downtrend, the Bitcoin miners get wrecked. Interestingly, today's not a horrible day. Most names are down roughly 1% or so, some 2%, but generally, 1 to 2%. Interestingly, Bit Digital is up 1.7%. I want to look at its chart, see what's going on. I also want to talk about Cipher and some recent AI news. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. So here we are on the monthly. This is one thing to look out for. The 50 RSI on the monthly, we're getting very close to it. It would be nice to see a bounce here at the 50. That can tend to be an indicator that we are heading higher if we can get a nice bounce at the 50, kind of like what we saw in the last cycle here on this pullback right to the 50. Moving to the weekly, we're not oversold territory yet, but getting closer and closer. You typically don't see Bitcoin oversold on the weekly until you're in a bear market, but look how close we already are. You'd think that we wouldn't be that close to it considering where we just came from. But, if we do see the weekly get to oversold, we'd likely head towards this mid 70,000 that I mentioned. If this area doesn't hold up, that we're trying to hold up, to be fair, right now, this roughly 85,000 area that was a previous resistance, you broke over it, saw a big reaction when we cleared it. If we can hold this, that'd be fantastic. If not, I think we are heading for the mid 70s, which in my opinion would be a great chance to accumulate, a great chance to buy. It'll likely be oversold on the weekly, which you don't see often. In that case, it would be close to 40% down, which in my opinion, if you're 40% down from Bitcoin's top, there's not that much downside left. In my opinion, every future crypto winter will be less severe than the ones in the past, and we have seen this trend. The drawdowns become less severe. The negative is those run-ups give you less multiples, and that is what we've seen in this cycle, diminished returns, and that's going to be what happens for Bitcoin. That's what happens for assets that mature and grow and get bigger and bigger. Over time, you get less multiples to the upside, and you see less drawdowns. It becomes more of a stable asset, which we have been seeing. I mean, the hardest drop we got so far this cycle was actually this drop here. Typically, you see a 32% drop. We've seen this here. Goes a little lower. I didn't get it accurate. 32, just believe me. Another 32% here. This one, surprisingly, roughly 6 as low as it went. And now it's roughly like 32 now, 33. But, compare that to other pullbacks. For example, when we thought we topped out in early 2021, we pulled back 50-something%. And then Bitcoin went to a new all-time high. Just very slightly, but it still did. What if this is what it needs? What if it needs a little bit more of a pullback and we actually do go to an all-time high? People are not expecting that. So many people are saying the cycle's over, throw in the towel. And that may be the case. I mean, looking at timelines, we're fighting the clock here. Typically, Bitcoin runs on that year after the halving. Our halving was 2024, and this should be our peak year, 2025. Every cycle you've seen a run to basically the tail end of the year. We're talking like November or December is when it tops out. There is a possibility that we see a violent recovery. People are counting that out at this point. While we're already at very heavily oversold levels when we're talking about the daily, near oversold when we're talking about the weekly, getting there. And when you've got crypto fear and greed index at lows, at around 10, which in hindsight is a great time to buy, I have a feeling we're not going to be looking at that much more downside. But let me know what you guys think about that. And just to show you guys, yes, the daily is getting towards pretty heavily oversold. It's at like 23. Last time we saw it anywhere near here was back in February. Remember, last time we saw a fear and greed index at 10 was right at this time in February. And we did bottom out right around this time in February, early April, March. This time was a great buying opportunity. It might be drawn out here. You might have a couple months of opportunities to accumulate near lows. Take advantage while you can. Bitcoin doesn't go oversold very often, like I've shown you here. I mean, the last time is almost a year ago. Last time before that, we're talking about July of 2024. It doesn't happen often. If you take advantage when Bitcoin's pretty heavily oversold, it tends to play out in your favor. I do think this is another opportunity. Now, we do have some Cipher news. Cipher and Google, they've been working together. Google announced an additional backstop of 333 million in Fluid Stack's lease obligations, bringing their total support to 1.73 billion. And due to that news, Cipher on Thursday announced they issued 333 million. Sorry, this keeps moving around with these stupid ads. 333 million in senior secured notes at a 7.125% rate, due in the year 2030. In the September agreement, Google received warrants to acquire 24 million shares of Cipher, which is about 5.4%. I do think personally that Google's going to work their way towards 10%, so they have more voting rights, more sway, more say. Also on Wednesday, Citizens JMP analyst Greg Miller initiated cover of Cipher, Iron, and Riot with bullish views on their AI infrastructure, noting that these companies provide critically scarce power supply, while the deployment of GPU clusters represents an opportunity to unlock significant value. Data center space returns continue to improve, he wrote. Even with record capacity coming online in the next 3 years, demand outstrips the pace of supply. He said that there's going to be a power shortage of up to 50 gigawatts by the end of 2030. These companies have an opportunity to create significant incremental shareholder value should they be able to execute in a business they had not operated in previously. He's talking about the ones that aren't into AI yet, the ones that are just Bitcoin miners. Many of these Bitcoin miners are now getting into AI, the vast majority. Now, looking at Cipher versus the other Bitcoin miners, Cipher is not yet at oversold. A lot of these Bitcoin miners on the dailies are at oversold. You could see this clear trend Cipher was in once it became a resistance. That was basically it. Along with this massive bearish divergence, you saw lower highs on the RSI and you saw higher highs on the chart. We broke the 50 MA, it found it as a resistance, trying to hold this level right here. Was a interesting level back in 2021, kind of a top, a peak, kind of wicked up, but it didn't go much further. In my opinion, if we keep dropping, we're going to likely test this level, this 1150 that we bounced up, found it as a support. If we keep dropping, I think 1150 is a good target for Cipher. They did report earnings. Unlike a lot of the others, they posted a loss. Next earnings, they're anticipating a loss. Pretty good growth in revenue to the tune of about 20 million. They're definitely growing their revenue along the way, but you see a lot of unprofitable quarters with Cipher. But the market doesn't give a shit. Can you believe it? That it's up 36 times from its crypto winter lows, basically outpacing all the other Bitcoin miners. That's just insane. And I guess it goes to show you that sometimes the market doesn't necessarily care that much about valuations, I guess, or positive earnings, because there are certainly more profitable, consistently profitable Bitcoin miners than Cipher. One thing that's interesting and encouraging about Cipher is we do have a bullish divergence. We have the RSI seemingly hitting higher lows, while the price basically hit equal lows here. Looks like trying to double bottom here, get a bottom here at like 13. Same story with the 1 hour. You'll see that we bottomed out back here in like mid-November. The price is still basically at that same level, holding that level. RSI recovering. That's a good sign. This is what you want to start seeing, while they're bottoming out. Preferably you'd want to see this like on the daily, but you're seeing this on the 1 hour, on the 4 hour. This is a good sign that we're starting to see kind of some strength coming back. People are starting to buy. People are starting to add, starting to try to hold things as support. And that's what we need to see. We need to see Bitcoin try to hold a support. It's been a falling knife. We need to see Bitcoin hold a support, so then the Bitcoin miners can start recovering. One Bitcoin miner that is now oversold is BTBT. It's oversold on the daily. Of course, it can go more. But last time we saw it oversold was back here in February, like Bitcoin. During that max fear, we saw BTBT oversold back here in February. It saw a bullish divergence, similarly to a lot of other stocks at the time. Higher low on the RSI, lower low on the price. And we bottomed out. Ran from like $1.70 to the 4s. We're here at that same level RSI wise, oversold. If you were looking at BTBT in the 4s thinking about buying, are you not considering it here? It's looking a lot more attractive. And yes, BTBT did reach that $2 that we suspected. It needs to hold this 2. If it breaks 2, it's likely it's going to retest its lows back in April of 2025, which was right after February when we bottomed out. So we can definitely test, the 170 area. In my opinion, that'd be a fantastic time to add, although it can go lower if we keep seeing Bitcoin weak, Ethereum weak, more importantly. BitDigital in the end is an ETH play. ETH needs Bitcoin, BTBT needs ETH. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship, I guess, or mutual relationship, something like that. You might want to see this try to establish a floor first. Like I said, these are falling knives. They're hitting new lows almost daily, by the day, if not every other day. Watch this try to establish $2 as a support. Get some sideways action. Get this RSI to start come back up while the price goes sideways. And that goes for all the Bitcoin miners. If you're seeing them at oversold levels, look for that RSI to start to get a bounce while price either goes sideways or goes lower. You want to take advantage of them when they're beaten down like this, in my opinion. It seems like a lot of people want to add when there's excitement, when there's hype, which is understandable. People get caught up in hype, but you should get caught up in fear. Get nervous during the hype. Get caught up and excited during the fear, and FOMO during the fear. BitDigital did report earnings. We talked about it briefly. They beat estimates. They were expected to see on profitability. They saw a profitable quarter. And upcoming earnings, they're expecting on profitability. It's always possible they, surprise and hit a profit. The thing to realize, though, is ETH is losing value. Bitcoin's losing value as we end this year. These Bitcoin miners, they're going to see a fat unrealized loss on their Bitcoin holdings, on their ETH holdings. So that's one thing to consider. They might take a hit for earnings because of it. It is definitely looking that way. With our recent drop, we will see where the year ends. But it is looking like they're set to see an unrealized loss on their next earnings. So we definitely need to watch how this year ends. Could give you a sign of what to expect for earnings. BTBT is trading at $639 million right now. Essentially trading at their cash and their crypto value. Digital assets were $423 million. Cash and cash equivalents, $179 million. You're talking about roughly $600 million on their balance sheet, and a profitable company, for now at least, and most of this bull market. When you see these Bitcoin miners trading at their value, not seeing multiples, typically you want to be trimming when they're at multiples of their, enterprise value, basically. You don't see it often when they're trading under the value of their assets. One thing to consider is if Bitcoin keeps dropping, ETH keeps dropping, obviously their assets are going to lose value. They're going to see more of an unrealized loss on their holdings, and valuations could come down more in anticipation of that. But these are the times you typically want to buy, when there's like no growth priced in, when there's no excitement with the Bitcoin miners. And this is definitely one of those times. Now let me know what you guys think. How are you feeling about Bitcoin? Are you waiting for it to find a floor? Same with the Bitcoin miners. Are you waiting for them to find a floor? Or are they looking attractive to you valuation wise? You want to start dipping your toes, start nibbling. Now you don't want to have a feast here necessarily, in my opinion, but you want to start adding, taking advantage of that cash that you hopefully shored up while we were seeing excitement and hype, while we were saying it's time to trim a little bit, take some cash off the table, prepare cash for hard times. Hopefully you guys did take advantage of that. Thanks as always for watching. Have a good weekend. Here's to a better week next week. I'll see you in a couple days.